How you doing? My name's Tim Breyer. I'm with a company called National Seed. We're out of Lyle. What I'm going to do is I have two handouts. I'm going to go over the handouts and then kind of go through some of the different things that are on the table here. If you have any questions in between, just raise your hand, okay? I really wanted to go over the grass seed mixtures first. This is the time to do the seeding. Soil temperature usually has to be about 55 degrees. Right now you're probably close to that, so this is the time if you're going to repair any spots from the winter or from last year's to put it down now. Yep, here you go. Basically, Clark Devine has three mixtures. I'm going to start with the first one, which is the Sunny Mix. What I did is I gave you an analysis of the components of the mix, and what's nice about it is it comes up quick within about maybe 5 to 7 days, and the bluegrass that's in there takes about 3 to 4 weeks. It just depends on the temperatures. This time of the year you're going to be towards more the back end because again, the soil temperature is a little bit cold versus where if you plant it in the fall it's going to be a little bit warmer. So everything on the Sunny Mix comes up quick, fine bladed. You usually want to seed that about 5 to 7 pounds per thousand if you're doing like a new lawn, or 4 to 6 pounds per thousand square feet if you're doing like an overseeding, okay? I'm just going to kind of point over here. They usually have them in 10-pound bags, or they can have it where you just scoop out what you want. What's nice about grass seed, regardless, is let's say you buy a 10-pounder and you only need like 5 pounds. Grass seed's usually good for a couple years. So as long as you keep it somewhere dry and it doesn't get wet, you could use it this fall or even the following, next year. So it's not anything where it has like a real short shelf life, okay? Moving on to the rye mix, this is the one that they have. This is a turf type rye. It comes up quick. It's fine bladed. We call it a turf type, which means it's attractive to the eye, and usually comes up within like a week to 10 days. Okay, again, something good for overseeding in that, and again, a real good mix. It's permanent. Everything in it comes back year after year. The one thing I forgot to mention on the Sunny Mix is you'll look for like bluegrass in there. And what bluegrass does is it has like a rhizome, which is a underground root. And what bluegrass does is over time, if you fertilize it, it'll form a rhizome underneath the ground, and it'll form a daughter plant. So in essence, what it does is over time, it'll fill in your lawn, okay? So you always want to try to look for something that has a little bit of bluegrass in there if you're looking to have that filled in, or if you just have a couple spots here and there, you can always use the rye mix too. On the shady mix, again, everything in the mix from Clark Devine is permanent. The seeding rate for the lawns is you want to be around 4 to 6 pounds per thousand square feet. And I forgot to mention on the overseeding for the shady mixture around 3 to 4 pounds per thousand. You'll notice on the shady mix it has mostly like red fescue and chewing fescue. Those are more shade tolerant, okay? You won't see a real high percentage of bluegrass in there because bluegrass tends to do better in this sunny environment, or atmosphere, I should say. Are there any questions on the grass seed? I kind of wanted to just go over those with you, just the different components to let you know that they're good mixes. They're specially formulated here for the Chicagoland area. It could take the winters, it could take the summer heat. So really, whatever one you go with, you'd have no problem. The thing you just have to be a little bit cautious of it coming out of the spring, you're going to have a little bit longer time of germinating just because the soil temperatures are kind of on the brink of 55. We were just out in Lyle this morning. Right out there, it's 47 degrees soil temperature, so it's getting close. Yeah.
What's the best way to plant it?
Yeah. The best way to plant the grass seed is to try to work it up, scratch the surface, so that when you do seed it, you want to try to get that seed impregnated into the top 1/4 inch of the soil. You don't want to necessarily leave it laying on the top, but you don't want to bury it either. If you throw down the grass seed and you throw like this much fertilizer over it, it's probably not going to germinate. So you only want to go maybe like a 1/4 inch into the soil so that it's just on the fringe there of being able to pop and then to get growing.
So like rake it?
Yep. You want to rake it out, scratch it up a little bit, almost work out like any compaction or any hard soil there. And then after you loosen up a little bit, you can come in and sprinkle it in, and then use a fertilizer, or they have peat moss here. And when you do a layer over the grass seed, again, you want to do something real thin. You don't want to impede it where if you do something real thick where you have this much peat moss, it's not going to grow. So you just want to give like maybe just a half, maybe 1/4 inch of covering over that soil or of the existing soil. So whether you use peat moss, do you have mushroom compost here, Jay?
Not this season.
Okay.
I can get that in, I believe.
You got peat moss is a real good one to use besides just the regular topsoil. So again, you could also use like a starter fertilizer, okay? I'm just trying to look here. Here's one right here. This is step one for seeding. So let's say, I don't want to jump ahead, but you don't need to do anything with crabgrass. You could just go ahead, get some grass seed, put your starter fertilizer down, and just keep the soil moist. Typically, you want to water the grass maybe like twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week, especially with these type of temperatures where it's a little bit cooler out. When you get into more of maybe into the middle of May, you maybe want to water it maybe once a day for about 10 minutes. You just want to keep the soil moist. You don't want to drench it, but you want to keep it moist. So it's just kind of a visual that you're going to have to do on it. Yep.
I just use the Scott's Easy Seed,
Okay.
and I'm noticing there is a little bit of seed on the top. I just sprinkled it on by hand,
Yeah.
but it's been about 5 days now, and I'm watering it every day.
Yeah, no, you're way too early. You got to give it at least a couple weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
That long?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, your soil temperatures are probably a little bit cooler here than they are out in the suburbs, and out there it's already 47. So I'm going to tell you, you're
Well,
probably
I'm in the suburbs. I'm in Mount Prospect.
You're in Mount Prospect? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're probably a little bit warmer then. You're probably not going to see anything realistically maybe for another 10 days.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Especially
Okay.
you got to think of the temperatures at night. You're still getting below 50 degrees on a consistent basis. So
Yeah.
I would just keep it lightly watered, and usually probably by that third or that last week of April, it should be up.
Okay. I just wondering what I did wrong.
Yeah,
'cause
no.
I followed the directions. And
Yeah, no. 5 days.
There are some seed on top, but I'm sure there's more
Yeah.
underneath there.
Yeah,
'cause
you
I
just want to
sprinkled
make
it
sure
out.
that it's impregnated into that soil. So like let's say it's just sitting there and you get a windy day or you have birds, you want to make sure you don't want to lose it.
Okay.
So again, if you don't have anything, you could just throw like a little layer of some topsoil or peat moss over it just to keep it in place until it pops.
Okay.
But the one thing I want to caution you is, especially like you, since you bring up the example, with any of these mixes, it's not going to come up in 5 days. Again, you're kind of towards the back end because of the cooler temperatures. So realistically, you're probably about 10 to 14 days. So you just want to keep it lightly watered. It's not going to not grow. It's a little bit cooler out right now. That's all.
All right. I'll be patient.
Yep. Typically, just so you guys know, we sell the sod farms, so they plant just straight bluegrass and they grow sod, and then they, sell it to a landscaper. They'll sell it to a store like here. They'll plant in the fall because that's when the soil temperature is the warmest. So even then, bluegrass doesn't germinate for at least a couple weeks. So 5 days, you're gonna have to give them more. Any type of mix you use, you gotta give them more time. Okay. Are there any other questions on the grass seed? Yep.
If you're going to use the overseeder, what settings would you use for the 3 different types?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. On the 3 different types, I almost tell people you probably want to put it on the lowest setting because there are so many different spreaders. What I don't want you to do is you open it up all the way and you're halfway through your yard and it's all gone. So what I like to do is tell them to put it at the lowest setting, and you can always make a second or third pass, and the reality is you get better even distribution of the seed as it is. So I don't want to sit here and give you recommendations on a per spreader basis because that's going to be difficult. I would just put it on the very lowest setting, and again, go north, south, east, west on that area that you're seeding, and that way you get even distribution of it, and you don't have all the seed come out halfway through the lawn if you have it open up too much.
So if I did overseed, I'd have to wait another 2 weeks or so to even cut my lawn, right?
No, you could cut it. You
Really?
can cut it, yeah. I mean, if you seeded it and you got spots, you could cut it. That's no problem. You just want to make sure that if you do have any large clippings that it's not, impeding that growth, that new seed to come up.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing you got to watch is just when those new seedlings come up, you just want to try to stay off them or not rake anything because they're so tender with the roots. Okay. Any other questions on the grass seed? Okay. What I thought I would do next is kind of go over the fertilizers that they have here at Clark Devon. Basically, the easiest way to do it is by holidays. Okay, so we just had Easter. And the thing you have to keep in mind is just because I say it's Easter, it's not like you missed it. You're like 2 weeks after, even 3 weeks after. So if you haven't done it yet, it's not a problem. The biggest thing you want to keep in mind is, what's your purpose, okay? If your lawn looks great and you just want to fertilize, this is the one that you'd want to use right now, this crabgrass preventer, okay? So the only thing with some of these is it's like grass seed. Everything has its pro and its con. Like I was mentioning bluegrass, it's a real good grass to use. The problem is it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for it to germinate, okay? Where with something like this, you want to put this down to feed the turf, but typically if you want to seed, you're going to have to use something else, because what this does is it impedes any type of weed seeds to come up, but then that also in turn is the grass seed too. So if you're looking to do both, this is not the one. But if you're looking to just fertilize and thicken up your turf, the density of your turf, this is the one that you'd want to use, okay? If you're looking to seed and come out of the gate and you want to do something right away, this is the one that you'd want to use. You'd buy your grass seed with your starter fertilizer, and then this is not only going to feed the turf, but then it's going to give the seeds a little bit of a kick to germinate, okay? So every fertilizer kind of has its own different use, okay? There's not one that's better than the other. It's just, again, if you're not looking to seed, you could just do your crabgrass control, and if you're looking to seed, you could use this one with the starter lawn food in it, okay?
Do crabgrass control.
It's going to be difficult to do that. There's a chemical out there. It's called 2%. It's very expensive. The bag's like, $90, and you can seed at the same time, and it gives you crabgrass control. The best thing to do is to, try to fill in. The best weed control, to be honest with you, is to have a better stand of grass. So the less gaps you have, the less weeds that you're going to have, because you're going to have that turf there. So to answer your question, there really isn't one that's out there that you can do that I know of, okay? A lot of these have the chemical in there to impede the weed seeds. That's also going to in turn do it for the grass, okay? You could do maybe that spot with the crabgrass control, and then the rest you could do the seeding with your starter fertilizer, okay? The next one is typically like around Memorial Day. This is one that you'd want to do like your weed and feed, okay? So this is going to be, again, you could do it from mid-May through, maybe June 10th. And what you want to do with something like this, especially since it's a granular, which means that these particles are in there, you want to do it when the turf's a little wet. And you might say, well, why is that? You want this to stick to the plant, okay? So maybe do it like on a heavy dew morning, or maybe like after a rain. But what you don't want is you put this down at, like, let's say 7 o'clock in the morning, and then like at 10 o'clock in the morning it rains. It's going to make this less effective, okay? So you try to want to time it where you're doing it right after where the plant's a little wet, but then at the same time, you're going to have a day where it's not going to be watering on it. Make sense? Okay. The next one that you'd want to do, and they don't have them all up here because the season's not into it yet, but around July 4th, they have one here. I know they'll have it in probably within the next month or so. You'd want to do like your grub control. And it's kind of like, you have house insurance, car insurance. You don't know if you're going to get grubs, but this gives you the insurance policy of putting this stuff down. And with the grub control, you want to make sure it gets watered in. So the carrier or the stuff that's in there to prevent them from feasting on your turf roots gets down to where they're at. So you want to try to time that again when it's going to be raining, like right after that. Okay, so if you know it's going to be raining on Saturday, throw it down Friday afternoon, it gets watered in, you're good to go. Okay? On Labor Day is kind of like your slow release. Something like this, you could just do like a lawn builder. Again, you could put this down maybe the 3rd week of August. You can go through maybe mid-September. And again, this is just something that's going to feed the turf over time and make it more dense. And then last one on like Thanksgiving, again, you could do it like around Halloween, maybe the first part of November. You could just do like a winterizer, something like this, like a new lawn starter, something like this where it doesn't have a lot of night. The one thing I wanted to tell you too is you notice these 3 numbers, like a 12, 16, 8. Does everybody kind of know what these numbers are? NPK. Yeah, NPK. So this is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. And typically, when you want the turf to green up and to really get going, you'll look for something that's got a little bit higher nitrogen because that's what's going to feed it. these two other components are used mainly to help thicken the cell walls of the plants and also to help the grass seed and stuff germinate. So typically when you get into the winter months when the turf is going to be going dormant, you don't want to use a lot of nitrogen because you don't want to have a lot of top growth. You're trying to build a root system to last through the winter. So this would be something that you'd probably want to look at as maybe as a winterizer. And the thing that you look at too is when they say starter fertilizer, and you know it's got different bags and stuff, you could use this again as like a winter. We always call it as like a starter winterizer. So again, you could use something like this towards the fall, or you could even use it now if you're doing your seeding because it is a starter fertilizer. Okay. They have some specialized ones here, like the Scots, where if you're looking to have like a problem with a lot of your moss on your lawn. This is something where it's just going to feed your turf, but yet take out the moss. I'd probably recommend where maybe if it's not raining, maybe just sprinkle the moss with some water. So when this puts it on there, it kind of attaches to that plant and dies. Okay. There you go. Does anybody have any questions on the fertilizer at all? One other thing that they have here is Milorganite. You know, it's an organic fertilizer. It depends, you know, again, what your use is. If you're just looking to fertilize and you want to be, you know, organic, they have the Milorganite here as well. Okay? Yep.
I want to ask, is it the same as the grass seed, where you can use it year after year, your bag?
Yeah, the fertilizer, absolutely. The big thing is with stuff like this, if it's stored in like a humid area, it might get like a little hard. Okay, it might like solidify like a brick. It won't get too bad. So you might have to just take like a hammer and just tap it a little bit if you had some left in there. But again, you could use this a year from now if you had some left over. That wouldn't be a problem, as long as it doesn't get wet. Same thing with grass seed. In fact, a lot of the sod farms that we deal with, they want stuff that's a year old because when it comes out of the field, it's actually a little moist. And believe it or not, when seed's a year old, the germination is a little bit higher. So just something to keep in mind. If you buy some grass seed here and you buy a 10-pounder and you only need like 5 pounds, you could use 5 pounds this fall or the following spring and you have no issues. Okay? What I wanted to do too here at Clark Devon, what they have is nice is, and I usually do this at least once or twice a year, but they have an aerator here. And is this a dethatcher? Oh, this is a seeder. You have the dethatchers, they're out of stock?
We do have dethatcher. It is out right now.
Okay.
And we have 4-hour rates on the equipment and also 24-hour rates on the equipment.
Okay. And what's nice about this is that you get a little exercise, but I always split it with my neighbor. So we'll get like a 4-hour rate and we'll do like 3 or 4 yards and we'll get it done. But does everybody know what an aerator is or not really? Okay. Never seen anything like it. Okay, what this is basically, you start it up and the back end of it is they have these cores, okay? And what this does is it actually pulls soil out of the existing lawn, but it pulls it in like a core, like a plug, okay? And what this does is it helps loosen up the soil so like water, air, and fertilizer can get down to the root of the plant. So typically when you have a lawn that's compacted, you're probably going to see dead turf. So when you're asking how to prepare it, you probably want to come in and scratch that area up with a rake or with an aerator, loosen that up so that when you throw your seed on there, that it gets into that top 1/4 inch of the soil.
Is that a manual one?
That's kind of like, it's not a manual one, that's not really going to pull out a core like this will, but that's kind of like a, you know, just like kind of like a hand-used tiller, you know, where you're going to loosen it up a little bit. So you could use something like that on a smaller scale. But if you have a bigger lawn and you have a lot of compaction, I usually, because I have a dog, I'll aerate at least once a year. Okay? Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, because we have postage stamp size lawns in
Yeah.
the city, and this thing is huge. I was wondering if a pitchfork or if there's any other kind of home remedy that would work.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if a pitchfork would work, but you know you should look at it, and it's not in right now, it's a smaller unit, is the dethatcher, okay? And what the dethatcher does is it just takes that layer of dead grass from the crown to the topsoil. So that's a much smaller, it's almost, Jay, it's more equivalent to the size of something like this, isn't it, the detacher? Yeah, it's not as big.
That's right.
And I would, for something like a smaller yard, I would definitely then look at that dethatcher as just to help, loosen up the existing soil there and just take out some of that dead grass that you might get from the winter. To be honest with you, I'm actually dethatching this weekend, and then I'll aerate in the fall.
What are the rates for these?
The lawn aerator, 4-hour rates. Let's talk about 4-hour rates just for a second. Lawn aerator, $52. Seeder, $52. Dethatcher, $45. We even have a mower and tillers if you're interested in that. And then there are 24-hour rates as well.
Do you deliver them?
It's a good question. We do have a van. I know that that we do pick up and deliver. I assume we would do something like this. There may be an additional charge on something like that.
Okay, and again, even if you do the 4-hour rate, if you split it with like a neighbor, that has a smaller yard with you, it's only going to cost you 20 some bucks. That's not bad, in my opinion. So just something to keep in mind. I always split it with my neighbors on it. So the one thing I wanted to tell you too is when you're the gentleman here that's seeded, you kind of want to keep it lightly watered, but what you want to do is after that grass gets established, there's a misconception with a lot of people in that, you try to water every day. Okay, think about that for a minute. If you water every day and you only water like a 1/4 inch, guess where your root of your plant's going to go? It's actually going to come up and it's going to go where that water is. So once your grass does get established, you try to want to almost let it starve, so to speak, for water and water for longer periods so that all that water goes deeper and deeper, and guess what? That's what your roots do. So when you have an existing lawn or you have some newly seeded areas, sure, you want to do sporadic until that seed comes up, but then what you want to try to do is space that out so that you can go deeper with your watering, okay? That's just one of the things that I have on here. Again, if you follow the fertilization schedule with the holidays, that's the easiest way to have people remember it. Again, Easter for crabgrass, Memorial Day weed and feed, July 4th grub control, Labor Day is your slow release. And then around Thanksgiving, Halloweenish, you could do like a winterizer, okay? And I was mentioning this other machine here. This is a seeder. So what this does is this actually makes a slit into the soil, and it drops that seed in there so that it's right in there for you. So if you don't want to broadcast it, I was talking about how you get that seed-to-soil contact. That's what you're looking for. The more seed-to-soil contact you have, the better success that you're going to have with your grass seed. Okay, yep.
Tim, just to answer a question about pickup and delivery, yes, we will pick that up and deliver it. There are charges for that. And when we do that, it's going to be an automatic 24-hour. We'll drop it off one day and pick it up the next.
Okay.
That would be the point. It would be a 24-hour rate on that.
And just a couple other things that I have is, it's just common sense, but, if you put your grass seed down and you don't water it, I don't care if you have, a lot of this stuff you'll notice, the germination is usually 85 to 90%, and the amount of seeds per pound that you have in grass seed go anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million seeds per pound. So tremendous amount of seeds that you have here, but none of it's going to germinate unless you water it. So you don't have to go nuts, but if you did it 5 minutes a day, that's all you really need. You just need to keep it moist, okay? The longer, if you were to seed it and you didn't water it for a week, that's just going to push your germination time back that same amount because you're not watering it, okay? Yep.
Which sprinkler, like this kind or the one that kind of?
It doesn't matter. You just want to give it just a light, coating just to get it moist. So I would tell you, I don't know if there's one that's better than the other. Just as long as it encompasses whatever that newly area is, then you're good. And then the last thing I always recommend is, if you're investing the money with, the grass seed to germinate in that, try to use like a starter fertilizer like I mentioned here. You could use a little topsoil, you could use a little peat moss. So you just don't want to seed it and then say, okay, I'm done. Try to give it something to give it a little bit of a kick. And again, if you use this step 1 for seeding, you could use a little layer of peat moss over it. Just depends on, your preference, but either one's going to do the job. But, you want to give it a little bit of a carrier so you have better success with it. So I don't know if anybody had any other questions on the fertilizer or the grass seed or the rentals. And again, I can only tell you just from my own experience with my lawn is, I usually have a lot of dead grass over the winter, and for whatever reason, I have to dethatch in the spring, and then I have a dog I'll aerate at least once a year. So I can't tell you enough. Like when you get to you get to these sports fields like the Bears and these other athletic fields, they're aerating at least once a month because they have so much wear and compaction. And so to prevent your dead turf, or to prevent dead turf, I should say, you want to keep that soil nice and loose. So let's say you got a yard and you got a dog and you're like, you know what, this thing is dying out every month. If you come in and aerate, you're not going to hurt the turf. You could do it once a month, you could do it twice a week. And in fact, it's just a lot of places just don't have, like a park district, they don't have the dollars and the labor to do it that often. But when you get into some of these higher profile sports fields and athletic complexes, they're aerating at least once a month. So I highly recommend, if you can, to do this and dethatch once a year.
I don't know if other people have this problem, but I live so close to the lake that my soil's really sandy, and I asked a guy to dethatch it for me last year, and I think he came and spoke to you guys, and the soil was just already so loose. But
Yeah.
we have the other problem that
It's so
grass
sandy,
doesn't
yeah,
grow very well.
and on sandy soil, the problem is, that soil, it's like a wick. You water it and it just drains real fast. The best thing to use is that shady mix. It has fescues in there. That tends to do better in sandier soils. So you might want to just try that. And again, might be something where you just have to put in a few pounds each spring or something, but that'll do well in a sandy soil, the shady mix.
And Tim, there was a question about, gentleman says that he's got a tree, can't get grass to grow underneath the tree.
Yeah.
Have any suggestions for him?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. I guess with this shady mix, there's really no turf out there that can take 100% shade. So you still need 2 to 3 hours of sunlight per day. If you're not getting that, a couple different options. One, prune the tree, or two, go around the drip line of the tree and mulch that, and then maybe you can put in ground covers in there. But unfortunately, typically a lot of people will put in some shady seed coming out of the spring and it'll look good. And as long as it's getting 2 to 3 hours, this mix is going to do fine. Okay, again, this is specially formulated here for the Chicagoland area. But when you get into areas where it's 100% shade and you get no sunlight, no turf's going to make it. And so even the sod farms, they have like shade tolerant sod. Well, if you can imagine a sod farm, it's out in the open. There's no shade there. So when they throw it underneath a tree and it's got no sun, it's not going to do well. So again, as long as it's getting 2 to 3 hours, this mix will be just fine. But with this gentleman, if it's not getting that, instead of, you don't want to cut down the tree, but if they can prune some of those areas where they get more sunlight on there, this mix will do just fine.